Massachusetts for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chair Foster, for convening this important hearing, and to our witnesses for joining us here today. Certainly, systemic racial discrimination is widespread in the financial services industry. The damage of redlining, banking deserts, and employment discrimination has never been fully redressed or repaired in America, and all the data supports those facts. Today, mortgage lenders deny Black applicants at a rate 80% higher than white applicants, and payday lenders continue to target low-income people of color, charging 500% interest, even in the midst of a pandemic. Many believe artificial intelligence presents an opportunity to make the allocation of credit and risk fairer and more inclusive. However, AI technology and machine learning can easily go in the other direction and exacerbate existing bias, reinforcing biased credit allocation and making discrimination in lending even harder to prove. Cases of racial bias in AI are well documented and have impacted everything from mortgage loans and tenant screening to student loans. The deciding factor between whether the technology has a positive or damaging impact could be its developers. And Ms. Broussard, who is writing the algorithms? The algorithms that are being used to make important financial decisions like credit worthiness. Do the teams writing these algorithms generally reflect the diversity of people in America?
Generally, these teams do not represent the diversity of people in America. Silicon Valley and its developers tend to be very pale male and Yale. Compared to overall private industry, the EEOC found that the high-tech sector employed a larger share of whites, Asian Americans, and men, and a smaller share of African Americans, Hispanics, and women.
Thank you. In fact, in February 2020, the Financial Services Committee released a report on the diversity of America's largest banks, which found that banks were largely undiversified at all levels and departments, which those data points you offered there support that. Ms. Broussard, one more question. Will this lack of diversity affect AI used by financial institutions? What's the impact?
Absolutely, yes, there's an impact. So the problem is that people tend to embed their unconscious biases in the technology that they create. So when we have a small and homogeneous group of people creating AI, that AI then gets the collective blind spots of the community of people who are creating the algorithms. So the more diversity you have in the room when you're creating algorithms, the better the algorithm is going to be for the wide variety of people who live in America.
Thank you, Ms. Broussard. And just to further impact the impact of that on people's lives, uh, there are many different facets of AI that companies developing these technologies really need to consider. From, as we're speaking to here, who is developing the algorithms, to the AI's impact on job loss. A recent report from the World Economic Forum predicted that by 2025, the next wave of automation, amplified by the pandemic, will disrupt 85 million jobs globally. Ms. Vogel, what role should independent auditors play in helping to assess the human cost and the ethical implications of AI technologies so that both developers and the public can fully understand the ethical impacts these technologies have for actual consumers?
Thank you for that question. It's a really important point. We do have this growing body of experts. In fact, we have one on this very panel who do this important work of checking in, of taking the temperature and understanding where these gaps are. I think it's really important that we build our reliance and our infrastructure to support more algorithmic auditing, because these are the people who will tell us, is the AI doing what we expect it to? Are we discriminating? Are we creating opportunity? For whom will this fail? And how do we create more opportunity through our algorithms?
Thank you. I agree. Frequent and independent audits are critical. AR-supported recommendations in the financial services industry directly impact people's lives, as along with economic opportunities, and yet the data the algorithms use are trained on data that is rife with imbalance and discrimination. So as we do the work deliberately to enact long overdue economic injustice, we can't allow the AI industry to create new problems and to compound these already persistent and deeply embedded inequities. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. And we will now recognize Mr. Loudermilk from Georgia for 5 minutes. Whoops, and I believe you're muted,